There's a famous saying in the army about getting supplies that aren't available through normal channels. When soldiers need something, they have a smart way to explain it. You didn't steal that, did you, Sergeant? No, sir, it was tactically acquired. Since military personnel get hundreds of identical items, pouches, bags, backpacks, tarps, helmets, flashlights, canteens, gear often goes missing and must be replaced at personal cost. Another common military expression explains this: there's only one thief in the military, everyone else is just trying to get their stuff back. This endless cycle of borrowing equipment is usually overlooked by senior officers, who did the same thing as young soldiers. However, real stealing in the military is a serious offense. What would a commanding officer think if one of his men robbed multiple banks using military tactics learned in the army? This is the true story of Hermann Lamm, a dishonorably discharged German soldier whose military training led to the most successful bank heists in American history. His methods revolutionized organized crime and made him one of the world's most elite criminals. His friends called him the Baron. Born April 19, 1890, in Kassel, Germany, Hermann Lamm's path to crime began after joining the German army in a Prussian infantry unit. He learned small unit warfare tactics, gaining appreciation for clear communication, discipline, and chain of command. While an effective leader, Lamm proved difficult for superiors to control regarding personal conduct with fellow troops. Prussian soldiers maintained a tradition of excellence from the Holy Roman Empire days. They saw themselves as the Imperial German Army's military elite. Prussian officers held soldiers to the highest standards in combat effectiveness and moral character. The most valued ethical traits were honesty and integrity. Two qualities Hermann Lamm lacked. During leave from rigid military schedules, Prussian soldiers enjoyed common activities, meeting girls and gambling. Hermann Lamm frequently engaged in card games, competing for growing cash piles. Instead of winning honestly, Lamm resorted to cheating, counting cards and peeking at other soldiers' hands. With money at stake, card games often ended in fights between Lamm and soldiers who felt cheated. Rather than building trust with fellow soldiers, Lamm developed a reputation as a con man. This breach of trust resulted in multiple disciplinary tribunals. Officers saw Lamm's behavior as unfit for a Prussian soldier. His consistent lying and cheating revealed his true nature. If he cheated at cards for small money, how could he be trusted on the battlefield? After numerous infractions and ineffective punishments, superiors had enough. In 1914, the young soldier was discharged from the German army. Like many veterans, Lamm found civilian life difficult without military structure and purpose. With few job opportunities in Germany, he decided to start fresh in America, hoping for new opportunities. Lamm's discharge and migration timing couldn't have been better. By summer 1914, European powers including Germany were approaching all-out war, a conflict that would kill 40 million people. Arriving in New York City, Lamm found himself free from his former country's troubles. Before him lay limitless opportunity, a chance to leave his damaged reputation behind and start an honest new life. However, like millions of immigrants before him, Hermann Lamm quickly discovered that starting over in America wouldn't be easy. He faced major cultural changes, language barriers, and the difficult transition from military to civilian life. With World War I's outbreak, the United States saw dramatic increases in anti-German sentiment. The German submarine sinking of RMS Lusitania in 1915, killing over 1,000 people including 123 Americans, increased hostility toward German Americans. German cultural displays were shunned, the language silenced, and German-owned businesses boycotted or vandalized. Towns and cities with German names changed their labels. In extreme cases, Germans and German Americans were attacked or killed by vigilante mobs under suspicion of treason. Hermann Lamm, with his thick German accent and basic English, found himself in a country that openly despised his heritage. With doors to honest living closing, Lamm possibly rebelled against this hateful society by turning to petty crime. Using his earnings, Lamm bought a pistol and began a string of low-level thefts, burglaries, and hold-ups, pocketing just enough cash to survive day to day. Eventually, Lamm's luck ran out and he landed in jail. The long hours of silence and boredom were meant to give prisoners time to think about their choices and hopefully make better decisions. Hermann Lamm did spend time thinking during his prison sentence, but not about consequences of his criminal actions. Instead, he reflected on his failed robberies and his time as a German army infantryman. During military service, he learned that small units could become powerful forces when well-coordinated, communicative, disciplined, and when planning was based on reliable intelligence. If small unit actions worked on battlefields, how effective would they be targeting different objectives? Lamb began wondering, what if he could assemble the right crew and adapt military training to rob banks? When his jail sentence ended, Herman Lamb was reformed, but not as society hoped. The former petty thief had evolved not into an upstanding citizen, but into a far more sophisticated criminal. As World War I ended in late 1918, the United States emerged as the world's dominant superpower. Its surging economy propelled the nation into the Roaring Twenties, a decade of prosperity. Banks were practically bursting with cash. With military training in hand, Herman Lamb was determined to line his own pockets using techniques he'd devised during incarceration. This became known as the Lamb technique. Until that point in American history, criminals approached bank robbery spontaneously and recklessly. One or two gunmen would burst through doors with violence and enthusiasm but little planning. They'd hop counters, shove guns in frightened tellers' faces, then flee with only a few $100s, perhaps $1,000 if lucky. This spontaneous thinking presented too many risks. More often than not, would-be bandits ended up in handcuffs or shot due to quick responses from security, law enforcement, or armed civilians. Herman Lamb's bank robbery approach was far more methodical, carried out with military operation precision. Like battle plans, Lamb's heists began with reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. When selecting target banks, Lamb and associates would enter posing as security system salesmen or film production location scouts. Unsuspecting bank managers, excited about top security or movie features, would happily show them every part of the bank, including vaults and contents. During tours, Lamb noted guards, employee numbers, and business hours with least and most customers. Meanwhile, outside crews mapped police stations and patrol routes based on proximity to banks. Lamb could estimate how long local police would take to arrive once alarms sounded. When enough reliable intelligence was gathered, Lamb assigned specific roles to handpicked crew members sourced from local gangs and prison contacts. Men were selected for reliability, discipline, and unique skill sets. The dangerous task, like infantry sections Lamb knew, had little room for trigger-happy cowboys. While crew size varied depending on raid needs, three key roles always needed filling: the lobbymen, vaultmen, and lookout. Once inside banks, lobbymen neutralized armed security before focusing on crowd control, keeping employees and customers subdued while other men pushed deeper into buildings. With banks secured, vaultmen located branch managers and forced them at gunpoint to open secured vaults. Once accessing money, vaultmen with extra hands oversaw stuffing cash into bags. During all this, lookouts posted at front doors, tucked in cover, kept watchful eyes for approaching cops or curious people. Getting into banks was easy, getting out cleanly was entirely different. To swiftly escape law enforcement, they needed reliable vehicles and excellent drivers. Considering their lives depended on this, Herman went where he knew he'd find the right people: motor racing events. During the early 1920s, America saw massive motorsports popularity surges. Rapidly evolving vehicle technology meant cars were faster and more powerful than ever, with modified engines capable of topping 100 miles per hour. With thousands of American servicemen returning from Europe after World War I, plenty of hot-headed young men were willing to push vehicles to absolute limits, hoping to make names in the growing sport. Since motorsport wasn't the most lucrative profession in early days, many drivers, tempted by major payouts, gladly accepted Lamb's offers. While crew members familiarized themselves with bank layouts, chosen getaway drivers studied streets surrounding target areas, aiming to avoid traffic and commonly patrolled routes. Drivers created detailed maps highlighting cat roads, alleyways and side streets, allowing fleeing bandits to quickly elude police responses while staying off busy main streets. Behind wheels of cars with modified engines for above-average speeds, getaway drivers ran these cat roads dozens of times under varying conditions, timing laps to reach designated safe houses in quickest possible manner. With crews assembled and strategies in place, Lamb used detailed bank floor plans to build crude mock-ups of building interiors. These allowed bandits to perform dry-run rehearsals of upcoming robberies, ironing out plan kinks before implementation. As men ran through each heist step, Lamb, like squad leaders commanding troops, orchestrated operations with stopwatch in hand to ensure they met tight deadlines. On paper, These steps, known collectively as the Lamb technique, resulted in foolproof heists. Being a former soldier, Lamb knew it was impossible to account for everything that could go wrong. What Lamb and his gang couldn't predict were the effects their actions would have on organized American crime. Although not desiring criminal notoriety, Lamb had no idea his military techniques would forever revolutionize bank robbery. By implementing his newfound strategy, Herman Lamb alongside various gang members conducted some of the most successful bank heists in American history. Throughout the 1920s, the German soldier left his mark across the Midwestern United States. He took down the most secure banks with startling ease, walking away with tens of thousands of dollars, what would be hundreds of thousands or millions today. As Lamb's criminal resume grew, so did his reputation in criminal circles. He quickly became a legendary figure renowned for expertise and daring raids that saw opportunistic bandits lining up for chances to work with him. Adding to his mystique was Lamb's cultured sophistication. He adapted well to notoriety. With accumulating wealth, Lamb indulged his love for life's finer things. He was often seen dressed elegantly, socializing among other socialites and criminal bigwigs in exclusive establishments. The Baron, as he became known, was unrecognizable from the desperate German migrant who had arrived years earlier. Despite the Baron's criminal reputation, the American public was equally enamored by his daring bravado. To them, crime was already rampant, but Lamb brought rebirth of something more nostalgic, the notorious outlaw image. This anti-hero had long been romanticized in American history and popular culture. In a decade dominated by warring mobs, corruption, and organized crime, Lamb's robberies brought to mind smooth-talking, gunslinging exploits of Billy the Kid or Jesse James. While the American public might have been swooning over the Baron, state law officers and federal agents tasked with taking him down felt differently. American law enforcement, both local and federal, was unprepared for Lamb's tactical bank robbery approach. His meticulous preparation and discipline ensured he was always one step ahead of officers who arrived long after bandits had fled. In one recorded instance, Lamb and his men hit a bank and escaped with their score in less than 5 minutes. While the Baron's raids aimed to avoid bloodshed, the former soldier wasn't opposed to firing well-aimed bullets when necessary. When police officers confronted the Baron and his men during heists, they found themselves outgunned. The .38 caliber revolvers police carried were no match for Browning automatic rifles, shotguns, and Thompson submachine guns frequently carried by Lamb and his men. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, established only in 1908 and still relatively new, was equally caught off guard by Lamb's crime spree. His revolutionary criminal tactics resulted in equally drastic shifts in federal authority strategy. They quickly adapted methods to combat growing organized crime waves. Specialized task forces were assembled, dedicated to studying Lamb's strategies, now being widely adopted by other criminal gangs. Working with state and local law enforcement, these task forces became increasingly adept at tracking sophisticated bandits like Lamb, cracking down on criminal networks through informants and wider surveillance. By 1930, outlaws like Lamb were feeling the heat of encroaching law enforcement. Still, that did little to stop the Baron, whose heists had collectively netted him over $1 million, nearly $19 million in today's currency. Like most men making livings at gunpoint, however, it was only a matter of time before Lamb found himself staring down someone else's barrel. On December 16, 1930, Lamb alongside gang members W. H. Hunter, Walter Dietrich, James, Oklahoma Jack, Clark, and 71-year-old G.W. Dad Landy robbed the Citizens State Bank in Clinton, Indiana. The robbery went off without problems, with men making for the getaway car with $15,657. Nearly $300,000 today. Not the Baron's biggest score, but the stock market crash the year prior was hitting everyone hard, including banks. W. H. Hunter, sitting behind the wheel of their escape vehicle, anxiously waited for men to pile in. Then he spotted a lone man exiting a barber shop, approaching the suspicious group with a shotgun clutched firmly in his hands. Panicked, Hunter floored the gas pedal, whipping the vehicle into a sharp U-turn that forced them onto the sidewalk. The impact blew out the vehicle's front right tire, crippling its speed as it took off down the street. The vigilante barber shop owner fired his shotgun, alerting other armed citizens and lawmen to the fleeing robbers. Ditching the car, robbers took off on foot with an armed posse hot on their heels. A rolling gunfight played out on Clinton streets. With law enforcement sirens closing in, desperate criminals quickly commandeered a new vehicle. In another stroke of misfortune, the stolen car had been modified with a speed limiter, making it impossible to exceed 35 miles per hour. Under constant fire from a mob now numbering in hundreds, Lamb and his gang hopped from vehicle to vehicle. They embarked on a 50-mile chase that crossed into neighboring Illinois. Despite criminals' best efforts, the posse of armed citizens and policemen was impossible to escape. With Hunter mortally wounded, Lamb and what remained of his gang found themselves cornered in the small village of Seidel, Illinois. Walter Dietrich and Jack Clark surrendered to law enforcement. However, Lamb and colleague G.W. Dad Landy had no intention of surrendering. For a prolific criminal like Herman Lamb, giving up would mean at best life behind bars, at worst a trip to the electric chair. This was to be the Baron's last stand. Being the soldier he was determined to go out on his own terms. With Landy preparing to follow, Herman Lamb, the father of modern bank robbery, had reached the end of what felt like a long but very short road. He chambered one more round into his pistol before turning the weapon on himself. While the famed Baron of bank robbery met his end in the botched Clinton job, the effectiveness of his techniques would live on well after his passing. As the 1930s played out, his grandeur as a nostalgic anti-hero would sour as economic conditions worsened following the Great Depression. Nobody was enamored by bank robbers anymore. His cohorts, with little job prospects, found themselves serving lengthy terms. Convicts like Walter Dietrich, now in Indiana State Prison following Lamb's final heist, spent years planning both escapes and future bank jobs. Falling in with Dietrich and absorbing wisdom from his time working with Herman Lamb was another hot-headed convict whose exploits would eventually overshadow the Baron, a man who would become one of the most notorious outlaws in American history. John Dillinger. Though his name has been lost to time, Herman Lamb's legacy has left lasting marks on American crime and modern society. Whether it's bulletproof glass windows bank tellers now sit behind as we slip checks through small cracks at the bottom, or other security measures we take for granted, Lamb's bank robberies have had notable impacts on the country's history. A disgraced German soldier who came to America hoping to find his place in a new world, did he succeed? Perhaps not as intended, but he made a mark nonetheless. After all, who hasn't heard the expression of an escaped criminal being on the lam? Herman Lamb, most of us who leave military service credit our time with teaching us valuable skills, leadership ability, adapting to different environments, overcoming adversity and difficult situations. But Herman Lamb certainly took it in the wrong direction. Speaking of military theft, here's a short story. When I got to my first unit, 3rd Radio Battalion in Hawaii, one of the first things we did was a battalion field exercise. Being recon guys, we went one way while the rest of our battalion went elsewhere, setting up tents. We were going to rough it without tents, living in the wilderness while spying on our battalion. They would be the enemy and we were recon guys doing observations and radio collections. We were doing observation from a ridgeline maybe a couple hundred yards from the battalion setup. They had no idea we were there. Every morning like clockwork, this one short Marine would set his alarm to wake up before anyone else, right around dawn. He would sneak out of his tent, open one of the MRE boxes, 12 meals in a box, and cut open every single one. He'd take out all the good stuff, Skittles, candy, M&Ms, peanut M&Ms, milkshakes, protein bars, all the treats that made MREs worth eating. He'd eat all that for breakfast, then leave the rest of the MREs for everyone else. We'd watch other Marines wake up an hour later, come out looking for food, open the box, and we could hear them cursing and swearing from across the gap. Who's opening the boxes and doing this? We were laughing because we knew what was happening and who was doing it. For the rest of my time at that battalion, I had the impression that kid was a scumbag. You don't do that, you pick one MRE and eat that one. You don't cut them all open and take stuff from other Marines. He would have gotten beaten up if anyone had found him. We never told anybody, but from that day forward, he was an inside joke for me and my buddy Sean. With Herman Lamb, there's always at least one. But that person is often the glue holding everything else together. As much as they're not enjoying their career because nobody likes them, though some can be oblivious, nobody's fighting with each other because we all dislike this guy. It's almost like an essential aspect of every healthy military unit is having the black sheep, the one person nobody likes, even the commanders. Thank you for listening and watching. A huge thank you to all supporters. May God be with each of you no matter what you're dealing with.